Hi, my name's Andrea Ventola. I'm a PhD student here at the University of Michigan, and today we'll be running a Sieve test. You always want to make sure you're considering safety, so wear your safety glasses when performing any test. And I'll also be referencing the lab manual throughout this video, and I encourage you to do the same as well. I'll begin by going over some equipment we'll need for the test, the most important being the sieves themselves. So here in the sieve stack you have a lid, and you have a series of sieves. You want to make sure when you order the sieves, the coarsest sieves are up top, and they are numbered with the smallest numbers. And then as you progress down the sieve stack, the finest sieves have the largest numbers as their names. Lastly, you have a pan in order to catch any material that may pass through this finest sieve. You also have a scale that you need later in the test. We have 2 brushes in order to clean up the sieves after testing. We have some earplugs when the sieve stack is going because it can get quite loud. And lastly, I've measured out a 250-gram sand specimen to run our test. The final thing is the sieve shaker itself, which we'll get to in more detail when we actually run our test. So that's the equipment for this test. The first part of the procedure is to take some initial weights of your sieves. You don't need to take the weight of the lid, we can set that aside. And you want to individually take the weights of the sieves in the stack. You want to make sure that before you take the weights, the sieves are cleaned out and free of any debris prior to testing. And even if you run multiple sieve tests in each day, you want to make sure that the sieves are cleaned and reweighed before you take each test. So for the sake of the video, I won't weigh each of them, but we will throw up some images of the different mesh sizes and how they compare to one another, the coarsest versus the finest. So you would just simply make sure your scale is tared out, take the weight of each sieve and record it. You can set that aside and repeat for the rest of the sieves, including the pan. The next step in the procedure is place a sieve stack in the sieve shaker. You want to do one final check to make sure that the sieves are ordered correctly. So the coarse is up at the top, and as you work your way down, you have the finest mesh. And then lastly, make sure the pan is still in the stack. Next, you want to pour your specimen into the top of the stack. You want to make sure that you pour it slowly because some of the finest particles can become airborne. You also want to use a paintbrush to clean out the container to make sure that there's no remaining particles. You can put the lid back on, place the cover plate on, put the shaker arm down. The procedure notes that the shaking should take place for 10 minutes. And for this machine, it's an automatic timer. So we can set 10-minute timer for the shaker, hit start, and once the 10 minutes are up, the machine will stop shaking. But before I click start, I'm going to put some earplugs in. And now we're ready to start. Now that the test is done, we can remove our earplugs, carefully remove the sieve stack, and reweigh our sieves. When you return to reweigh your sieves, you want to make sure you return to the same scale as you used earlier. And just like before, we don't need to weigh the lid. You may find that some of your sieves may have no material on them after your test. And in our case, this coarsest sieve has no material on it. But you still want to record the weight even of the ones that don't have any material on them after you run your test. Make sure your scale is zeroed out like before and record the weight. And you can set that aside. For the sake of the video, I won't record the weights of the rest of the sieves, but we will include some images showing the different particles and particle sizes retained on each of the sieves. You also want to record the weight of the pan and the material in that. and you can perform additional tests on this material, such as Atterberg or hydrometer tests. So after you take all the weights and you have double checked that all the math works out, you can discard the material in each of the sieves. And for cleaning them, you have two different options. For these coarsest sieves, you can clean them out using a coarser steel-tipped brush like this one. But for the finer sieves, they can be quite delicate. So you want to make sure that when you clean these out, you use a finer brush such as this one. And that concludes the sieve test.